friends, welcome back to Food Prep Guide. Today is Taco Tuesday in our house and my taco seasoning jar is empty. So I was going ahead and making up some taco seasoning today, and whenever I am making up a batch of homemade seasoning, I like to just go ahead and try to do all of my homemade seasonings because I've got all the spices out already. It just makes sense when I have them all out to just go ahead and knock out the others, even if I'm not completely empty. I am running low. So today we are going to be making 5 homemade seasoning mixes. We're going to be doing our taco seasoning, a beef stew, like all-purpose seasoning that's just really great for beef stew, a let's see, like a garlic onion salt. Now, I know garlic salt and onion salt are popular, and I use them all the time. And it just hit me one day, you know, anytime I use garlic or salt, I typically am using onion or onion salt too. So I just did up a blend of garlic onion salt, and I've been using that, and it works fantastic. And then I don't have to have 2 separate containers of garlic salt and onion salt. So that's going to be the third one that we're going to do. The fourth one we're going to be doing is, oh yes, my homemade sausage seasoning. So this sausage seasoning is just a homemade blend that I've made up when I want my meat to have a little bit of a sausage flavor. I will typically use this on ground beef, ground turkey, or ground venison. And if I usually do it in like spaghetti, stroganoff. Sometimes when I'm doing some sausage biscuits, I have in a pinch not had any pork when I wanted to do some sausage biscuits, and I have in a pinch used ground turkey seasoned heavily with this sausage seasoning, and it worked great. You could tell it wasn't pork, but it was still absolutely delicious, and it had those flavors of sausage. So we're going to be making that DIY sausage seasoning, and then the last one we're going to be making is like our homemade version of Lowry's seasoning salt. We can make that up pretty easily ourselves using all of the seasonings that you see behind me. Let's get started.
By the way, if you would like help building your food storage, scroll down to the description box of this video and click this link for our free 1-year food storage plan. We calculated a year's supply of food for one person, then broke that data down into a week-by-week list of items to build your pantry on a budget. We'll send it straight to your inbox. If you're new here, we invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss all of our upcoming food preservation, pantry storage, and gardening tutorials. Now back to the kitchen.
Okay, recipe number 1 is taco seasoning. So we need to start with half a cup of chili powder. And this is going to make a 1 pint jar of taco seasoning. Next, we need 1/4 cup of onion powder, a 1/4 cup. Into that, we will add 2 tablespoons of cumin, ground cumin. One and 2. Into that, we will add 2 tablespoons of garlic powder. I usually do heaping on the garlic powder. Next is 1 tablespoon of paprika. Next is 2 tablespoons of salt. You can use any kind of salt. I'm just going to be using my pink salt for this. I'm out of my Celtic salt, but I usually use pink salt for this anyway, but you can certainly use any other type of salt you like. So 2 tablespoons of that. I am still dealing with clunky clods of salt, y'all. Do not vacuum seal salt. I did not know that. This salt is 3 years old. I vacuum sealed it, all of it, 3 years ago. Still working through this batch, and I am still dealing with clods of salt. I put this salt through a grinder, y'all. Not grinder, like a grinder. My Vitamix dry mix container, and it is still, ugh. Don't vacuum seal salt. I learned my lesson. Okay, 1 tablespoon of black pepper. And that's it. And I'm remembering that this makes slightly less than a pint. So, I get a whisk. I'm just going to whisk that all together, and then we'll transfer it into our pint jar. Just going to break up any clods that I see in here. This taco seasoning recipe is not spicy at all because our family doesn't love super spicy foods, but you can absolutely add some like jalapeno type seasonings, some of the more spicy versions of paprika. You can mix this different levels of some spicy type of chili powders. The type of chili powder that I get is not super spicy all by itself, but you can certainly add some spice to that. I gotta get those clods sawed out of there. Okay, and into the pint jar it goes. And we have our homemade taco seasoning. Okay, recipe number 2 is our beef stew seasoning, and we're going to make up 1 pint jar of that. So to start, we need 1 cup of flour. This flour is just what's going to help that seasoning really kind of, well, I was about to say stick to the meat, but not stick to the meat, but it just thickens up the whole stew and gives it more of that stew type consistency. So 1 cup of flour. To that, we're going to add 3 teaspoons or 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning. Tally girl, why are you whining? My dog's whining. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. My dog was at the back door just whining so bad. She saw my son swinging and she feels like the kids can't be outside unless she's outside with them. She's a good, very sweet family dog. Okay, so we have our 1 cup of flour. We need 3 teaspoons or 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning. So I'm just going to do 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning. And to that, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of basil. I'm going to crush this up a little finer. This is homegrown dried basil, and it's just not crushed up quite as fine as I would like it. So I'm going to crush that up with my fingers real quick. Okay, 2½ teaspoons of salt. I'm going to be using pink salt for all of these recipes. 2½ tablespoons. I'm not going to be I'm not going to measure out another ½ teaspoon or tablespoon. I'm just going to do a heaping tablespoon to try to get that 1½ or 2½ tablespoons. So there's 1½. Here is 2½. Okay. And to that, we're going to add 1½ teaspoons of pepper. Again, I'm just going to do a heaping teaspoon to get 1½ teaspoons. Next, we need 2½ tablespoons of garlic powder. So 1 heaping, 2 heaping. Next, we need 2½ tablespoons of paprika. So heaping and 2 heaping. To that, we will add 1 tablespoon of celery seed. Where is my celery seed? Here it is. Celery seed. 1 tablespoon of that. Next, 2½ tablespoons of onion powder. Again, I'm going to do a heaping tablespoon and heaping tablespoon. And that is it for our beef stew seasoning. The recipe calls for rosemary. I don't buy rosemary. I do grow rosemary, but we are out. I need to grow more this season because we ran out of it super duper fast. But in order just to kind of make up for that, the recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of rosemary. I went ahead and added an extra teaspoon of the Italian seasoning. So the original recipe called for 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning and 1 teaspoon of rosemary, so I just did those 3 teaspoons of Italian seasoning. But You can do it however you want. Okay, into the jar it goes. This is a pint jar portion. And you would use 2 to 3 tablespoons of this seasoning per pound of meat. So ever how much pound of meat you're using in your beef stew, use 2 to 3 tablespoons, almost always do 3 tablespoons of your beef stew seasoning. Okay, rocking and rolling with recipe number 3, and that is our homemade sausage seasoning. We're going to be doing a pint jar of this as well. And to start, we need half a cup of salt, half a cup of pepper, and I'm going to go a little bit light on the pepper, a little bit of a scant half cup. To that, we're going to add half a cup of sage. This would be like the rubbed sage that you get at the grocery store. Ooh, that pepper. Ooh. Okay, so half a cup of the sage. Oh, took about all the rest of it. So that's the last of my homegrown sage, so I need to add more sage to my list. I need to check how much I grew last year and note that I need to grow more sage along with more rosemary. Okay, so half a cup of basil. And again, I'm going to crush this with my fingers before I add it in to the recipe. So this is half a cup of basil. Okay, and to that we're going to add 2 tablespoons of marjoram. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm not sure, but I like it. 2 tablespoons of marjoram. I'm going to be generous with the marjoram. And that is it. Easy peasy. The sage and that marjoram are those are the seasonings that you think of when you think about sausage. That sage and marjoram is what makes sausage sausage. Of course, there's other seasonings, as you saw, but those are the 2 main ones that really give it its sausage flavor. Stinking vacuum sealed salt. I'll never do that again. Okay. I was mixing this up and I was like, this does not look right. And I forgot the onion powder. Okay, so we need a 1/4 cup of onion powder. I was like, this is way too green for what it should be. I've made this so many times and it's just not looking right. So I forgot the onion powder. So a 1/4 cup of onion powder. Now it should start looking a little more normal. Yeah. Whew. All that dust, all that seasoning dust. Whew. Okay, that looks a lot better. That's what it should look like. So into the jar it goes. This is a pint jar amount of this mix. And I use this on any type of meat that I want to give a little bit of a sausage flavor to. Okay, homemade sausage seasoning. Okay, recipe number 4 is our garlic onion salt. Now, if you're going to be making a garlic salt or an onion salt, the recipe or the ratio that you follow is a 3 salt to 1 part onion powder or 1 part garlic powder. So when I was testing around trying to make a garlic onion salt, I decided to try a 2-1-1 ratio, and that worked out pretty well. So I don't use this a whole lot, so I'm only going to be doing a half pint jar. So to make a half pint jar of this garlic onion salt mix, we need half a cup of salt, and then just a 1/4 cup each of your garlic powder and onion powder. So 1/4 cup of garlic powder, woo! Gonna be a little more garlicky than usual, but that didn't hurt anybody. Okay, 1/4 cup of onion powder, and that's it. Just garlic powder, onion powder, and salt. And that is it. And this garlic onion salt is good on just about anything. Get all that dust out of the way. Okay, on to recipe number 5. Recipe number 5 is our homemade Lowry's seasoning salt. We're only going to be making about a half pint of this, so if you want any larger, just double or triple as you need to. So for half a pint, we're going to start with half a cup of salt. Two tablespoons of paprika. To that, we'll add 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, we'll add 2 teaspoons of black pepper, and last we need 2 teaspoons of sugar. And that 2 teaspoons of sugar is kind of what makes Lowry's seasoning salt so addictive. Okay, that's it. Half pint jar of our homemade Lowry's. Break up all those clods of salt and get it in the jar. And there is our homemade Lowry's seasoning salt. And there you have it, 5 delicious homemade seasonings. I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. If you missed our pantry mix video, we will post that right around there somewhere. And we had some Lipton onion soup mix. We did a cream of chicken soup mix and some, I think, pancake mix, stuff like that. So be sure to check that out. And I'm going to get some labels on these, get these in my pantry, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.